A man is told his first-class ticket, seat 1A, is invalid. He is calm. The gate agent, Brenda, smirks and gives his seat to a loud, flashy man. The black CEO, Marcus Thorne, simply nods, steps aside, and makes a single phone call. He doesn't raise his voice. He doesn't demand a manager. He doesn't need to. Because in exactly 45 minutes, that single phone call will bring the entire airline to its knees, halt a multi-billion-dollar deal, and turn this agent's smug expression into one of pure, unfiltered panic. The chaos is about to begin. The air at JFK's Terminal 4 was a familiar soup of stale coffee, jet fuel, and low-grade anxiety. It was 8:05 a.m., and the gate area for Global Air Flight 100 to London Heathrow was a restless sea of passengers. Marcus Thorne stood near the back of the first-class boarding line, a quiet island in the terminal's chaotic stream. He was not a man who commanded attention through volume. He wore no flashy logos. His suit was a bespoke charcoal grey, so dark it was almost black, but it was the quiet confidence of the tailoring, not the brand, that signalled its expense. He wore a simple, elegant watch, a Patek Philippe, but one so understated only a fellow connoisseur would recognize it. He was reading a financial brief on his phone, his face a mask of neutral concentration. At 42, Marcus Thorne was the CEO and founder of Thorne Dynamics, a logistics and tech conglomerate that had, in the last decade, quietly become the invisible backbone of half the world's shipping. He was on his way to London to finalize the largest acquisition of his career, the purchase of Global Air itself, a legacy airline drowning in debt that Thorne Dynamics was poised to save and revolutionize. The line shuffled forward. At the podium stood the gate agent. Her name tag read Brenda. Brenda was a woman who wielded her small slice of authority like a blunt instrument. She scanned passes with a rhythmic, bored aggression, her face set in a permanent look of mild disgust for the travelers she was paid to serve. Her lipstick was a severe, cracking red, and her voice, when she used it, cut through the terminal noise with a nasal whine. "Next!" she barked, not looking up. Marcus stepped forward, placing his phone on the scanner, the QR code for his ticket. Seat 1A, glowing on the screen. Brenda scanned it. A sharp, negative beep sounded. She scanned it again. Beep. She let out an exasperated sigh. "Sir, this ticket isn't scanning." "That's odd," Marcus said, his voice deep and smooth. "It was confirmed this morning. Perhaps you could try typing in the confirmation code?" Brenda's eyes finally lifted from the screen to his face. She took in his dark skin, his calm expression, and her gaze flickered with an assessment that was as quick as it was ugly. It was a look Marcus had seen 1,000 times, the look that said, "You don't belong here." "Sir," she said, her voice dripping with artificial patience, "the system says this code is invalid. Are you sure you're at the right gate?" "I'm quite sure," Marcus replied, his composure unshaken. "Global Air 100 to Heathrow. Seat 1A, Marcus Thorne." "Well, Marcus Thorne," she said, inflecting his name with disbelief. "Your ticket is invalid. It's probably a standby seat that didn't clear. You'll need to step aside and go to customer service." "It's not standby," Marcus stated calmly. "It's a fully paid, full-fare, first-class ticket. Here is the email confirmation and the receipt." He began to pull it up on his phone. Brenda waved a dismissive hand, her red-tipped fingers flapping. "I don't need to see your emails. The system is what matters, and the system says no. Step aside, sir. You're holding up the line." Before Marcus could respond, a new figure pushed past him. "Brenda, darling, you saved it for me." The man was loud, florid, and smelled strongly of expensive, over-applied cologne. He wore a bright pink polo shirt, a blazer with a gaudy crest, and a massive gold watch that screamed for attention. He looked to be in his late 20s, with a smug, entitled face. Brenda's entire demeanor changed. Her sour expression melted into a sycophantic grin. "Mr. Sterling, of course. We got you. That window seat you wanted." "Chadwick, please," he boomed, winking at her. He slapped his passport on the counter. "I assume you handled that issue we talked about?" Brenda leaned in conspiratorially. "It's all taken care of. The seat was flagged in the system. It's all yours." She typed furiously for a moment. Then a new boarding pass spooled out of the printer. She handed it to him with a flourish. "Here you are, Mr. Sterling. Seat 1A. Marcus Thorne stood frozen for a single, stunned second. Chadwick Sterling glanced at Marcus. He saw him standing there, his phone still in his hand. Chad smirked, a slow, greasy expression that clearly said, "Better luck next time, buddy." He didn't just take the seat. He reveled in the fact that Marcus was watching him take it. "Enjoy your flight, Mr. Sterling," Brenda chirped. "Always do, darling. Try to keep the riffraff out of first, will you?" Chad said, loud enough for Marcus to hear. He gestured vaguely at Marcus before sauntering down the jet bridge. The line behind Marcus began to grumble. Brenda turned back to him, her smile vanishing, replaced by the iron mask of petty tyranny. "Sir, I told you to step aside. I'm not going to say it again. Go to customer service, or I will call security for failure to comply." Marcus looked at her. He didn't raise his voice. He didn't flash his credentials. He simply held her gaze, his eyes becoming utterly cold. He absorbed every detail, her face, her name, the smug satisfaction in her eyes. He was no longer a passenger. He was a CEO diagnosing a cancer in the company he was about to own. "That won't be necessary," he said, his voice quiet, but resonating with a sudden, chilling authority. He stepped out of the line. He did not go to customer service. He walked over to a quiet cluster of seats by a window overlooking the tarmac, the very plane he was meant to be on, a massive Airbus A350, being prepped for departure. He sat down, crossed his legs, and pulled out his phone. He ignored the final boarding call that echoed through the terminal. He ignored the smug look Brenda shot his way as she prepared to close the gate. He opened his contacts and found the name Sarah Jensen, COO. He hit the call button. It was 8:16 a.m. The clock had started. Sarah Jensen, COO of Thorne Dynamics, was in the 40th floor boardroom of their Manhattan headquarters, presenting to the acquisitions team. The mood was electric. The 10 a.m. wire transfer of the initial $1.5 billion deposit was the final step before the papers were signed. "The integration of Global Air's logistics," she was saying, "will synergize with our existing drone and autonomous vehicle networks, cutting shipping overhead by..." Her personal phone, the one reserved for exactly one person, vibrated on the table. She paused mid-sentence. The entire room went silent. She answered it on speaker. "Marcus, you should be in the air." "Morning, Sarah," came his impossibly calm voice. "We have a slight deviation from the itinerary. I'm still at JFK. A frown creased Sarah's forehead. "Weather? Mechanical?" "Operational," Marcus replied, the word clipped. "I've been denied boarding on Global Air 100. A confused silence. "Denied? As in, overbooked?" "No," Marcus said. "Denied as in, my confirmed 1A ticket was declared invalid by the gate agent, who then proceeded to give my seat to another passenger. A Mr. Chadwick Sterling." Sarah's eyes widened. She knew that name. Chadwick Sterling was the famously useless nephew of Richard Davies, the current beleaguered CEO of Global Air, the one they were about to buy. "Marcus, are you saying..." "I'm saying the gate agent, a Ms. Brenda Smith, at gate B23, Terminal 4, discriminated against me, dismissed me, and gave my seat to the CEO's nephew, who then made a comment about keeping the riffraff out. The air was sucked out of the boardroom. The implications were catastrophic. She didn't know who you were, Sarah whispered, already knowing the answer. She knew I was a black man she assumed couldn't possibly be in seat 1A. That's all that mattered to her. Sarah, the culture at this airline is compromised from the ground up, from the CEO's family to the gate agents. Marcus paused. From his seat, he watched Brenda and the other agent laugh as they began closing the flight, preparing to pull the jet bridge. "What's the protocol, Marcus?" Sarah asked, her voice now turning to ice. "The protocol," Marcus said, his voice dropping, "is that we are a company that values integrity. Global Air has just demonstrated it has none. They've breached the good faith clause of our agreement. Article 7.3. Sarah's head snapped up. "Marcus, Article 7.3. That halts the entire acquisition. It freezes the assets." "That's the one," Marcus said. "Halt the 10 a.m. wire transfer. Immediately. I want our legal team, led by Mr. Harding, to call Richard Davies's legal team in precisely 10 minutes. Inform them that due to a material breach of good faith and a demonstration of systemic operational failure, the Thorn Dynamics acquisition is on hold, pending review. Effective immediately." "My God," one of the lawyers in the room breathed. "And Sarah?" Marcus added. "Yes? Call Richard Davies. Call him directly. Tell him his company's future is currently contingent on the employment status of his gate agent, Brenda Smith, at JFK. And tell him I'm feeling reconsidering." "It's 8:20 a.m., Marcus. The flight is due to depart in 10 minutes, Sarah said. "I know," Marcus said, watching the jet bridge begin to slowly, agonizingly, pull away from the aircraft. "He'd better hurry." Marcus hung up. He sat, perfectly still, watching the plane. He opened his laptop, not to rebook a flight, but to review the penalty clauses in the contract he was about to detonate. He was calm. He was focused. He was a surgeon preparing to make a very deep, very precise incision. He glanced at his watch. 8:25 a.m. From her office, Sarah Jensen made the calls. The first was to legal. "Execute 7.3. Kill the wire now." The second was to the personal cell phone of Richard Davies. Richard Davies, CEO of Global Air, was not in an office. He was on the 18th green of a private golf course in Connecticut, already drinking his first celebratory scotch of the day. The $1.5 billion deposit from Thorn Dynamics was landing in an hour, saving his airline from insolvency and securing his own multi-million-dollar golden parachute. His phone, held by a caddy, rang. He glared, annoyed, until he saw the caller ID, Sarah Jensen, Thorn Dynamics. He snatched the phone, his voice booming with false friendship. "Sarah, my dear, what a pleasure. Shouldn't your boss be halfway over the Atlantic by now?" "Richard," Sarah's voice was arctic. "The 10 a.m. wire transfer has been stopped." The Scotch glass slipped from Richard's hand, shattering on the manicured green. "What? What are you—" "It's a joke, right? A last-minute negotiation." "This is not a negotiation. We are invoking Article 7.3. As of this moment, the acquisition is on hold." "On hold!" Richard shrieked, his face turning a blotchy red. "For what? What possible reason? We've met every term." "You failed the good faith term, Richard. Specifically, you failed to operate your airline with basic professional integrity. Your future owner, the man signing your checks, Marcus Thorn, is currently sitting at gate B23 at JFK, having been denied boarding on his own flight." Richard's brain couldn't process the words. "Denied? A mechanical? He was personally denied by your gate agent, Brenda Smith. She called his ticket invalid and gave his confirmed seat, 1A, to your nephew, Chadwick Sterling. Richard Davies stopped breathing. The world tilted. Of all that idiot. He had told his sister to tell her layabout son to keep a low profile. Oh, God, he whimpered, stumbling over to the golf cart. It gets worse, Richard. Mr. Sterling and your agent shared a laugh about keeping the riffraff out while looking at Mr. Thorne. Richard collapsed onto the seat. This wasn't a mistake. This was a corporate execution. Sarah, please, he stammered, his mind racing. The stock, the board, the creditors, they would all find out. He'd be ruined. It's a mistake, a horrible, isolated, a rogue employee. Was it a rogue employee who put your nephew on a must-seat list, Richard? We know he was flying on a family pass. This is systemic nepotism colliding with systemic racism, and Marcus Thorne was the target. Where is he? Is he still there? I'll call the station manager. He's still there. But Richard, Sarah said, letting the silence hang. The jet bridge just pulled back. The plane is pushing off the gate. No, Richard screamed, fumbling with his phone. Tell Marcus. Tell him. I'll fix it. I'll hold the plane. He's not your employee, Richard. He's the man who just decided he may not want to buy your broken company after all. The line went dead. Richard, his hands shaking so violently he could barely type, dialed the number for the JFK station manager, Robert Fields. Robert, he roared when the man answered. This is Davies. Stop Flight 100. Stop it now. What? Sir, it's on the taxiway. The door is closed. I can't. You will stop that plane, Robert. You will drag it back to the gate if you have to. There is a man at gate B23 named Marcus Thorne. He is the CEO of Thorne Dynamics. He is the man buying this airline, and your agent, Brenda Smith, just refused to let him on the plane. The silence on the other end was absolute. Find him, Richard whispered, his voice cracking. Find him. Apologize. Get him on that plane, Robert. If he doesn't get on that plane, we are all finished. Robert Fields, a man who had seen everything from bomb threats to engine failures, felt a cold dread he had never experienced. He was already running. Back at Gate B23, the terminal had moved on. The gate area was nearly empty, save for Marcus Thorne, still calmly working on his laptop, and Brenda Smith, who was tidying her counter, humming a pop song, and basking in the afterglow of her little power trip. The flight, Global Air 100, was now just an icon on the departed screen. It was 8:59 a.m. Suddenly, Brenda's internal podium phone let out a piercing shriek. It wasn't the polite chime of a normal call. It was the emergency line. She snatched it up. Gate B23, Brenda speaking. A man's voice, strained and breathless, exploded from the receiver. Brenda, this is Station Manager Fields. Did you just close Flight 100? Yes, sir. Right on time, she said, preening. You idiot! You absolute, unmitigated idiot! Is there a man there? A black man, in a suit? His name is Marcus Thorne. Brenda's stomach turned to lead. She looked over, her eyes wide with dawning horror, at the man sitting by the window. He was watching her, his expression unreadable. He's here, she stammered. His ticket was invalid, sir. Invalid! I'll show you invalid. Keep him there. Do not let him move. I'm on my way. A moment later, Robert Fields himself came sprinting down the concourse, his tie flying over his shoulder, his face the color of ash. He was screaming into a radio. Get me the tower. Tell them to halt Global Air 100. Operational emergency. Halt them on the taxiway. Turn them around. I am not joking." This was the chaos. Passengers in the terminal stopped, pulling out their phones to record. A station manager, the picture of authority, openly sprinting and screaming. Brenda stood as if flash frozen, the phone still clutched in her hand. Robert Fields skidded to a stop in front of her podium, his chest heaving. "You!" He spat at her, his face contorted in rage. "What did you do?" He didn't wait for an answer. He saw Marcus, who was now slowly closing his laptop, as if he'd been expecting him. Robert rushed over, frantically straightening his tie. "Mr. Thorne? Mr. Marcus Thorne?" Marcus simply nodded, raising an eyebrow. "Sir, I am Robert Fields, station manager. On behalf of Global Air, My God, sir, I cannot begin to express our apologies for this misunderstanding." "A misunderstanding, Mr. Fields?" Marcus asked, his voice cutting through the manager's panic. "It seemed quite clear to me. My ticket was invalid. My seat was given to Mr. Sterling, and I was instructed to move along or security would be called. Your agent, Miss Smith, was perfectly unambiguous. She will be dealt with, sir. I promise you." Robert was sweating profusely. His radio crackled. "Sir, the plane is returning to the gate. We've stopped it." "You stopped a taxiing a 350? Marcus asked, feigning surprise. "That must be a significant expense, not to mention a massive delay for every other passenger." "It's no expense at all, sir. Nothing," Robert babbled. We are... His personal cell phone rang. He looked at the caller IDR and whimpered. It was Richard Davies. Robert answered, his hand shaking. "He's there, sir. Yes, I'm with him now." "Put him on." Davies's voice shrieked, audible even from 3 feet away. Robert numbly held the phone out to Marcus. It's CAO Davies. For you, sir." Marcus looked at the phone, then at Robert, then at Brenda, who was visibly shaking, her face pale beneath her heavy makeup. He took the phone. "This is Marcus Thorne." "Marcus! Marcus, thank God!" Davies wept into the phone. "Richard Davies, listen, this is the most appalling, embarrassing, and isolated incident. I am on my way to JFK myself. I will fire her. I will fire everyone." "Mr. Davies," Marcus said, his voice dropping to a boardroom chill, "you have a much bigger problem than one employee." It was 9:02 a.m., exactly 47 minutes after Marcus had been denied his seat. The plane, filled with 300 confused and angry passengers, was slowly, humiliatingly, taxiing back to gate B-23. The chaos was complete. The jet bridge, which had been so smugly pulled away, now crept back to attach itself to the aircraft. The thud of its connection was like a gavel. Inside the plane, passengers were on their feet, demanding answers. The captain's voice came over the intercom, tight with suppressed rage. "Ladies and gentlemen, we are being held at the gate due to a security issue originating from the terminal. Please remain seated." The cabin door opened. Robert Fields, the station manager, marched onto the plane. He ignored the flight attendants and passengers. He had one mission. He strode directly into the first-class cabin and stopped at seat 1A. Chadwick Sterling was already on his second glass of champagne, his feet up on the bulkhead, headphones on. He looked up in annoyance as Robert tapped him firmly on the shoulder. "Excuse me, can't you see I'm relaxing?" Chad snapped. "Mr. Sterling," Robert said, his voice dangerously low, "you need to gather your personal belongings and come with me. Immediately." Chad's face puckered in disbelief. "I think not. I'm a guest of the CEO. Go bother someone in coach." Robert didn't hesitate. He grabbed Chad's designer carry-on from the overhead bin and threw it into the aisle. "Get off this plane. You are here in error. You are not the passenger ticketed for this seat. Move, or you will be removed by Port Authority police for trespassing." The threat of police and the pure fury in Roberta's eyes finally penetrated Chad's arrogant haze. The entire first-class cabin was staring. This was a humiliation he couldn't charm his way out of. "This is outrageous! I'll have your job!" Chad hissed, fumbling to gather his phone and his glass. "No, sir, you will not," Robert said. "My job is the least of anyone's concerns right now. Get off." Chadwick Sterling, his face burning bright red, was force-marched down the aisle, through the galley, and back onto the jet bridge. When he emerged back into the gate area, the scene was a tableau of his own making. There was Marcus Thorne, standing perfectly composed, phone in hand, watching him. There was the ashen-faced station manager. And there was Brenda, now openly weeping, as two other airline managers flanked her, one of them collecting her airport ID. "What is this?" Chad demanded, turning to Brenda. "You told me the seat was clear." Brenda just shook her head, sobbing. I didn't know. I didn't know." "You didn't know what?" Chad yelled. Robert Fields stepped between them. "Mr. Sterling, your travel privileges on this airline are, as of this moment, suspended, pending a review of how you were upgraded into a seat that was already occupied by a full-fare passenger. Now please leave the gate area." Chad looked at Marcus, his mind finally connecting the dots. The riff-raff was the man they had turned a plane around for. His arrogance evaporated, replaced by a sickly, dawning fear. He scrambled away, disappearing into the terminal. Now all eyes turned to Marcus. Robert Fields approached him, bowing his head in supplication. "Mr. Thorne, your seat, 1A, is ready for you. The crew is waiting. We can have you in the air in 10 minutes. He gestured to the open door of the aircraft. Marcus looked at the plane. He looked at the distraught passengers peering out. He looked at the chaos of managers, the crying agent, and the delayed flight crew. He then looked at Robert Fields, a small, sad smile playing on his lips. "I'm not getting on that plane." The jet bridge thudded against the side of the aircraft, the sound of its magnetic locks engaging, echoing the finality of a guillotine. Chadwick Sterling stumbled out into the gate area, propelled by the silent, unyielding fury of the station manager. His florid face was a mask of disbelief and rage, his pink polo shirt rumpled. He saw the tableau waiting for him. The weeping gate agent, Brenda, now flanked by two grim-faced security officers, the circle of gawking passengers filming on their phones, and, standing perfectly still by the window, the architect of his humiliation, Marcus Thorne. "You!" Chad shrieked, his voice cracking. He pointed a shaking finger not at Marcus, but at Brenda. "This is your fault. You told me it was handled. You told me it was my seat." Brenda looked up, her face a grotesque mess of smudged mascara and smeared red lipstick. The ticket was invalid," she sobbed, a pathetic defense. I didn't know who he was." "It doesn't matter who he is," Chad spat, his arrogance making one last, fatal stand. "It matters who I am. I'm calling my uncle. You're all fired." Robert Fields, the station manager, who had been vibrating with a mixture of terror and rage, finally snapped. He stepped directly into Chad's path, his face inches from the younger man's. "Your uncle," Robert hissed, his voice dangerously low, "is on the phone with Mr. Thorne right now, begging for the life of this company. Your travel privileges are suspended, effective immediately. Your family pass is void. Now get out of this gate area, Mr. Sterling. Get out of my terminal. If you are still here in 30 seconds, I will have the Port Authority police arrest you for trespassing." The sheer, cold authority in Robert's voice finally pierced Chad's bubble of entitlement. He saw the security officers glance his way. He looked at Marcus, who hadn't moved a muscle, his expression one of mild, clinical observation. Chadwick Sterling, for the first time in his life, was utterly powerless. He was the riff-raff. In a sudden, pathetic scramble, he grabbed his carry-on and fled, pushing through the crowd, disappearing into the main concourse. With one problem dispatched, Robert turned to the next. The security officers gently took Brenda by the arms. "Ma'am, you'll need to come with us. Please bring your personal effects." "No, no, please," she begged, clutching the podium. "Robert, I was following procedure. The system," Robert said, his voice hollow. "You just cost this company its future, Brenda. Your procedure just humiliated the man who was about to sign all of our paychecks. You are suspended, pending termination. Give them your ID." One of the officers gently, firmly, unclipped the ID from her blouse. The plastic-coated card that had given her all her power was gone. Her name, Brenda, was no longer a badge of authority. It was a mark of shame. Her sobs were ugly, gasping sounds as they led her away, a pariah in her own terminal. The hard, immediate karma had landed. She was escorted out the same way she had threatened to have Marcus removed. Now, silence fell. The only sound was the hum of the terminal and the anxious murmur of the 300 passengers still trapped on the plane, peering out the windows. Robert Fields, his suit jacket damp with sweat, turned to Marcus Thorne. He smoothed his tie, a pathetic gesture of restoring order. He approached Marcus not as a manager, but as a supplicant. "Mr. Thorne, sir," he began, his voice shaking. There are no words, no apologies. What you have experienced it is antithetical to everything Global Air stands for." Marcus simply raised an eyebrow, a silent, powerful counter-argument. "Please, sir," Robert begged, gesturing with an open, trembling hand toward the open door of the aircraft. "Your seat, 1A, is ready for you. The crew is waiting. The captain is at the door. We have your champagne on ice. We can have you in the air in 10 minutes. Please, allow us to make this right." The entire gate area and the front of the plane held its collective breath. This was the moment the black CEO, having proven his point, would gracefully accept the apology and ascend to his rightful throne in 1A. Marcus looked at the plane. He looked at the anxious face of the captain, visible in the doorway. He looked at the departed screen, where Global Air 100 was now blinking a furious, accusatory "delayed" in red. He then looked back at Robert Fields, a small, sad, and utterly cold smile playing on his lips. "I'm not getting on that plane." If Robert Fields had been pale before, he was now translucent. "Sir, what do you mean? We turned the plane around. We fixed it." "No, you didn't," Marcus said, his voice quiet, but carrying in the stunned silence. He ignored Robert and lifted the phone back to his ear. Richard Davies had been on a silent, agonizing hold for the past 5 minutes, forced to listen to the entire gateside drama. "Mr. Davies," Marcus said, his voice a boardroom chill. "Are you still listening?" A frantic, squeaking sound came from the phone. Yes, Marcus, I'm here. I heard. It's done. She's fired. He's gone. It's fixed, see? A terrible, terrible mistake. But it's fixed. Please, get on the plane. We can talk when you land in London." "Mr. Davies," Marcus said, "you seem to be under the impression that the problem was a rude gate agent and your spoiled nephew. You are mistaken." He began to pace slowly, his voice calm, but every word was a hammer blow. Brenda Smith was not the problem, Richard. She was the symptom. She is the symptom of a corporate culture that rewards petty tyranny and enables racial bias. Your nephew is the symptom of a culture that rewards corrupt nepotism. And the fact that you, the CEO, felt comfortable enough to put him on a must-seat list, bumping a full-fare confirmed passenger, that Richard is the disease. Marcus stopped and looked out the window at the plane. The rot doesn't stop at the gate. It starts in your office. Marcus, no, I can explain, Davies whimpered. There is nothing to explain, Marcus cut in. So, no, I am not getting on that plane. My presence now would only further inflame the crew and the 300 passengers you have now delayed by over an hour. But more importantly, I cannot, as a businessman, fly on an airline whose operational integrity I no longer trust. And I certainly, he paused, cannot buy one. The silence on the phone was so total, Marcus thought Davies might have fainted. The deal, Marcus stated, as we knew it, is dead. My COO, Ms. Jensen, has already invoked Article 7.3. The $1.5 billion transfer has been stopped. You are in material breach. Dead, Richard finally whispered, the word hollow, a death rattle. Dead, Marcus confirmed. However, I am a businessman, and your catastrophic breach gives me options. So here is what will happen now. Robert Fields was standing frozen, listening to one side of a conversation that he knew was ending his career and his company. I am leaving this terminal, Marcus continued. I will be at my New York office at 40th and Park at 2 p.m. It is now 9:15 a.m. That gives you ample time to fly from Connecticut and meet me there. If you are 1 minute late, my legal team, who are already assembled, will file a public notice of intent to dissolve the deal, citing systemic corruption, securities fraud, and operational failure. I will attach Ms. Smith's full employee file, including all 12 prior complaints. I will attach your nephew's travel logs. Your stock will be worthless by 2:05 p.m. Your creditors, who you've been holding off with the promise of my money, will own you by 3. My God, Marcus, please. 2 p.m., Marcus repeated, his voice devoid of all emotion. And Richard, don't bother bringing your golden parachute calculations. This is no longer a friendly acquisition. This is a salvage operation, and I am the only one who can save you. See you at 2. He hung up the phone. He slid the device back into his suit pocket and looked at the shell-shocked Robert Fields, who looked like a man who had just seen a ghost. Mr. Fields, Marcus said, his voice polite, as if concluding a standard business meeting. You have a plane full of deeply unhappy passengers. You have a very angry flight crew, and you have a significant scheduling disaster on your hands. I suggest you get to it. Robert just nodded, his mouth opening and closing uselessly. Marcus picked up his single, understated carry-on bag. He smoothed the front of his suit, which was still, impossibly, uncreased. He hadn't been touched, he hadn't been ruffled, and he hadn't raised his voice. He turned and walked away from the gate. He did not look back at the plane, the managers, or the epicenter of the chaos he had unleashed. He walked calmly out of the terminal, a surgeon leaving an operating theater, his work precise, complete, and devastating. The airline was in chaos, the CIO was in disgrace, the gate agent was in custody, and Marcus Thorne was on his way to his office, about to buy an airline for pennies on the dollar. At 1:57 p.m., a man who looked like a ghost of Richard Davies was deposited by a trembling black car in front of the Thorne Dynamics headquarters. The building was a sheer column of glass and black steel that didn't just occupy its space on Park Avenue, it dominated it. It was a monolith of silent, unassailable power, a stark contrast to the dated, slightly desperate branding of the Global Air Terminal. Richard had flown from Connecticut in a state of pure, adrenaline-fueled terror. He clutched a thin leather portfolio, a pathetic shield containing talking points his shell-shocked lawyers had assembled in 90 minutes. Words like mitigation, isolated incident, and good faith renegotiation swam before his eyes. He knew, with a certainty that made his stomach clench, that they were useless. He entered the lobby. It was less a room and more a cathedral of corporate power. The floors were polished black marble. The 40-foot ceilings were coffered in dark mahogany, and the only sound was the faint, digital whisper of the stock ticker on a wall-sized screen. A single receptionist, a woman with the severe elegance of a Supreme Court justice, sat behind a desk carved from a single block of granite. Richard Davies. To see Marcus Thorne, he mumbled. The receptionist, whose nameplate read M. Evans, did not consult a computer. She simply looked at the atomic clock on the wall. Mr. Thorne will see you at 2 p.m. You are 3 minutes early. Please have a seat. Her voice was not unkind. It was simply precise. The implication was clear. Time here moved at Marcus Thorne's pace, and you waited for it. Richard sat on a hard leather bench. He was a king who, in the span of a morning, had become a prisoner awaiting sentencing. He replayed the events, the hideous, compounding errors. His idiot nephew, Chad, who he had told, explicitly told, to stop demanding favors. The gate agent, Brenda, a woman whose name he hadn't known 3 hours ago, but would now haunt his nightmares. He had been on the 18th green, a god of his small universe. Now he was here, a beggar. At 2:00 p.m. precisely, Miss Evans looked up. Mr. Davies, this way. The walk to the elevator was a death march. The elevator itself was silent, ascending with a speed that pressed him back against the wall. They exited on the 40th floor. The doors opened not to a reception area, but to a vast, open space that seemed to be floating above Central Park. The office was minimalist, furnished with steel, glass, and dark wood. And there, standing against a floor-to-ceiling window that framed the entire park like a conquered territory, was Marcus Thorne. He was in the same charcoal suit, as impeccable as it had been at the airport. He did not turn. "Richard, thank you for coming," Marcus said, his voice calm, his reflection staring back at Davies from the glass. Richard, desperate to seize any initiative, rushed forward, his portfolio flapping open. "Marcus, Mr. Thorne, I cannot begin to express. The flight, the agent. She's been fired. Brenda Smith, she's gone. Her employment was terminated before she even left the terminal. She's a disgrace, an aberration." He fumbled with his papers. "And Chadwick, my nephew, he's a fool, a spoiled, arrogant fool, and I've spoken to his mother. He's cut off. This is not the company, Marcus. This is not who we are. It was a cancer, a tumor, and I swear to you I have cut it out." He was babbling, his voice cracking. "We can proceed. The deal, the original terms. Listen, I'll even give you a discount. 10% off the top. A gesture of goodwill. Please, we can fix this." Marcus Thorne was silent for a long moment, watching a helicopter trace a line above the trees far below. Finally, he turned. His eyes were not angry. They were something far worse. They were diagnostic. He looked at Richard not as a peer, but as a problem to be solved. "A tumor, Richard?" Marcus said, his voice cutting through the office stillness. "You don't cut out a single tumor when the entire body is septic." He walked, not to his desk, but to a sleek tablet resting on a credenza. He tapped the screen. "While you were flying here," Marcus said, "my team, the one you were supposed to be joining, has been busy. We did a deep dive on Ms. Brenda Smith, employee ID 44921. Richard's blood ran cold. "You call her an aberration," Marcus continued, his voice dangerously smooth. But your own records call her a model employee. You fired her after she cost you $1 billion deal. But what about before? What about last month? He read from the tablet. March 12th. A formal complaint from a Dr. Anil Patel claiming Ms. Smith lost his family's seat assignments and refused to help, forcing his 80-year-old mother, who required assistance, to sit in a separate row in the back of the plane. June 4th, Marcus went on, his voice relentless. A complaint from the Johnson family, who are black, stating Ms. Smith escalated a simple ticketing question, accused them of trying to scam an upgrade, and threatened to call security when they produced their valid, full-fare first-class tickets. They flew in coach. September 19th. A complaint from a Ms. Chen, alleging Ms. Smith loudly and rudely made comments about her, not speaking English well enough to be in the priority line, and directed her to the general economy queue, causing her to miss her flight. Marcus looked up. 12 complaints in 3 years, Richard. 9 of them from people of color. And what was the result of these complaints? A single written warning, which was expunged after 6 months of good behavior. And a promotion last year for excellent on-time departure records and gate efficiency. Marcus set the tablet down. She wasn't an aberration, Richard. She was your system. She kept the planes moving, and you looked the other way at the human cost. Your company didn't just tolerate her behavior. It rewarded it. Richard had shrunk into himself. I didn't know. HR. You are the CEO, Marcus snapped, the first flash of steel in his voice. It is your job to know. And then, there is the matter of your nephew. He walked toward his desk. We cross-referenced Chadwick Sterling's family pass logs. He has been upgraded from coach to first class 14 times in the last 6 months, always on flights that were fully sold out. This morning, he wasn't upgraded. He was assigned my seat, 1A. A seat that had been paid for, with cash, by a full-fare passenger. Your agent didn't just make a mistake. She fulfilled a request. You weren't running a public-facing airline, Richard. You were running a private club for your incompetent family, staffed by bullies you promoted. Richard Davies physically collapsed into one of the visitors' chairs. He was broken. The portfolio slipped from his hands, his useless talking points scattering on the floor. What do you want? He whispered. Marcus watched him for a beat, then sat behind his desk. The desk was a vast expanse of polished obsidian, and he looked, for all the world, like an emperor about to pass judgment. What I want, Marcus said, is irrelevant. What will happen, as of this moment, is one of 2 things. He steepled his fingers. Path A is the one my lawyers are practically drooling over. In fact, they are gathered in my boardroom right now, finalizing a massive suit. Breach of contract, gross operational negligence, systemic corruption, securities fraud for fraudulent representation of your company's operational health. He gestured to a thick binder on the corner of his desk. At 4 p.m. today, we file that suit. We will also call a press conference. We will detail everything. The riff-raff comment. Your nephew's upgrade history. And of course, Brenda's employee file, including the 12 complaints and the 9 from people of color. The Wall Street Journal will love that. The FAA will be forced to launch a full-scale investigation. The SEC will investigate your fraudulent representations to us, your buyers. Your stock, which is currently frozen, will open tomorrow at 0, if it opens at all. Your creditors, who you've been holding off with the promise of my money, will have a field day. They will tear your airline apart and sell your planes for scrap. You, Richard Davies, and your nephew, Chadwick Sterling, will be named personally in the suit for tortious interference. Your reputation will be, well, you won't have one. You will be the textbook case for corporate malfeasance for the next 50 years. You'll be lucky to avoid jail time." Richard was ashen. He looked physically ill, his hand trembling on the armrest. "Or," Marcus said, his voice softening just a fraction, "there is path B." He slid a single sheet of paper across the vast desk, followed by a heavy, expensive-looking pen. "Path B is my good faith gesture. The original deal is dead. This is not an acquisition. This is a receivership. It is a surrender." Richard stared at the paper. "The terms are simple," Marcus explained, as if to a child. "Thorn Dynamics will assume 100% of Global Air's outstanding debt, effective immediately. This prevents the public liquidation. It prevents the creditor free for all. We will take control of 100% of the company's assets. The stock will be delisted. Your shareholders will be wiped out. Your board is dissolved as of your signature." Richard's eyes flickered up, horrified. The purchase price, Marcus said, is $1. Richard made a small, strangled sound. $1? My shareholders. My board. Your board is gone, Marcus cut in, his voice flat. Your shareholders backed the wrong CEO. They're lucky the company will even continue to exist, which, I might add, is the only thing protecting the pensions of your 30,000 actual employees. This is the only way the brand Global Air survives past midnight. He slid a second sheet of paper over. "And you, Richard, you will sign this first document, agreeing to the new terms. And you will sign this second document, which is your immediate, unconditional resignation. You will cite personal health reasons. You will receive no severance, no golden parachute, no stock options, no consulting fee. You will not even be paid for the day. You will walk out of this building with nothing but the clothes you're wearing and the public shame of what you allowed to happen." This is execution," Richard choked out. "This is path B," Marcus corrected him. "In return for your cooperation, my company will graciously agree to handle this matter internally. No public lawsuit, no press conference detailing your family's corruption. You get to disappear. Your shame will be private, not public. That is the only mercy you are being offered." Marcus looked at his watch. "My legal team is waiting for my call. You have 5 minutes." For Richard Davies, the choice was simple. Total public annihilation, or total private annihilation. It was the choice between a quick death and being fed to lions in a coliseum. His hand, shaking so violently he could barely hold the pen, reached out. He grabbed it. The sound of the nib scratching on the paper was the only sound in the room. He signed the first page. He signed the second. It was not a signature. It was a confession. He let the pen drop. Marcus Thorne picked up the 2 sheets of paper, reviewed them, and nodded. He buzzed his intercom. "Miss Evans, Mr. Davies is leaving." He stood up, the meeting clearly over. "Miss Evans will validate your parking," Marcus said, turning back to his window, his empire. "Goodbye, Richard." Richard Davies, a man who had woken up as CEO, stumbled out of the office, a ghost in his own life. 2 days later, the financial world was rocked by the announcement. Thorn Dynamics had completed its acquisition of Global Air for a final purchase price of $1, plus the assumption of debt. The Wall Street Journal called it the most brutal and brilliant corporate takeover of the decade. Marcus Thorne was named interim CEO. His first act was not from the boardroom. He filmed a company-wide broadcast from Hangar 8 at JFK, standing in front of the massive landing gear of an Airbus A350, the same type of plane he was meant to be on. The broadcast was mandatory. Every employee, from pilots in layover hotels to baggage handlers on their break, watched. "My name is Marcus Thorne," he began, his voice echoing slightly in the cavernous space. "As of 2:05 p.m. 2 days ago, I am the new owner of this airline." He paused, letting that sink in. "I was supposed to be a customer. I was supposed to be your partner. I was standing at gate B23, ready to fly to London to finalize a friendly deal. But I was told I didn't belong. The entire company was frozen. I was told my ticket was invalid. I was told to step aside. I watched my confirmed, paid-for seat be given to a man who had no right to it, but had the right connections. I was threatened with security. And I was dismissed. The previous leadership called this an aberration, a rogue employee. I call it a symptom of a deep, pervasive disease. A culture that values who you know over what you do. A culture that tolerates disrespect, that rewards bias, and that has, for years, failed its customers and its own best employees. "Today," he said, "that ends. The old guard is gone. Richard Davies has resigned. The board is dissolved. The Family Pass program is suspended and under a full audit. The era of nepotism and insulated privilege is over, effective immediately. Our new mission is simple: integrity, service, respect, for everyone, from seat 1A to 42J. To that end, we are immediately implementing a new Passenger Bill of Rights. We are also launching the single most comprehensive, top-to-bottom implicit bias and de-escalation training this industry has ever seen. It will be mandatory, it will be rigorous, and it will be led by the best. Some of you will not be comfortable with this change. Some of you, frankly, will not pass. You will be found, and you will be removed. We will no longer reward on-time departures at the cost of human dignity. But for the vast majority of you," he said, his voice warming slightly, "the pilots, the crew, the agents, the mechanics, the handlers who do your job with pride and professionalism every single day, this is a new beginning. I am investing $500 million starting today into new equipment, better systems, and better pay. We will become the airline that everyone wants to fly and everyone wants to work for. The new Global Air, a Thorne Dynamics company, starts now. Welcome aboard." The hard karma, when it landed, was devastatingly precise. Brenda Smith was not just fired. Because she was escorted from the gate by Port Authority police, her security clearance was immediately flagged. The TSA and Department of Homeland Security permanently revoked her credentials. She could never work in any airport in the United States again. Not as an agent, not as a barista, not even as a janitor. She tried to sue for wrongful termination. Marcus's new legal team countersued her, personally, for tortious interference with a multi-billion-dollar corporate transaction. They buried her in legal fees until she dropped the suit and declared bankruptcy. She was last seen working a night-shift data entry job in a windowless office in a different state. Chadwick Sterling was cut off. His mother was furious, but her fury was useless. The family's wealth had been tied up in Global Air stock. It was now worthless. The trust fund he'd been coasting on evaporated overnight. His name, thanks to internal leaks, was synonymous with the airline's downfall. He was a social pariah. He sold his gaudy watch, then his car. He learned, in the most painful way possible, what riffraff actually felt like. Richard Davies disappeared to a small, rented condo in Florida. He was not on a golf course. He was a broken man, the subject of whispers and cautionary tales in every boardroom in the country. He was the man who lost an entire airline for $1 because he couldn't control his gate agent or his nephew. It was a legacy of total, absolute, and inescapable failure. 6 months later, Marcus Thorne boarded a flight to London. The plane was a newly refurbished Global Air A350, painted in a sleek new livery of black and silver. The gate agent, a new hire, scanned his pass with a warm, professional smile. "Welcome aboard, Mr. Thorne. It's a pleasure to have you." He walked onto the plane. The first-class cabin was immaculate. A flight attendant, seeing him, approached. "Mr. Thorne, welcome. Can I get you anything before takeoff?" Marcus settled into his seat. "Seat 1A. Just some water, thank you," he said, smiling. "And, well done. The airline is looking excellent." As the plane pushed back from the gate, on time, Marcus Thorne opened his laptop. He didn't just get his seat, he took the whole airline. Karma isn't always loud. Sometimes it's the quiet click of a phone call. Marcus Thorne proved that you don't have to scream to be heard. While Brenda and Chad were busy with their small, petty power, Marcus was operating on a level they couldn't even comprehend. He didn't fight them for a chair, he bought the entire building. The airline thought it had a minor customer service issue, but 45 minutes later, it discovered it had a billion-dollar integrity problem. The chaos that erupted wasn't just a delayed flight. It was the total, deserved collapse of a rotten system. Thank you for listening to this story. We work hard to bring you these real-life dramas every week. If you enjoyed this journey of karma and justice, please show your support. Hit that like button, share this video with someone who needs to see justice served, and most importantly, subscribe to the channel and ring that bell. We have so many more stories to tell.